Welcome to the Dare to Multiply podcast. On this podcast, we help passionate Jesus followers become courageous, obedient disciples who impact their communities for the kingdom of God. I'm your host, Cynthia Anderson, a disciple multiplication coach and trainer. We have some amazing guests coming up, people who are taking risks to launch new discipleship movements in their areas. I can't wait to learn from them and introduce you to their ministries. Together, we'll show you how to make and multiply disciples and groups in your area. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any tools or content coming your way. I also wanted to mention a free newsletter on disciple making that I send out every single week. It's called Daring Disciples, and it's all about how to share your faith, overcome obstacles we all face in the journey toward multiplication. To subscribe to that, go to daretomultiply.com/newsletter. Let's dare to multiply. Today, we're talking about an important topic. How does money that is given into a movement from outside, usually from someone in the West or a church, how does that money impact the movement practitioners? And this is an important question, not just how does it affect the movement, which is something I've talked about on this show many times, but how does it affect the leaders of the movement practitioners? What did they experience related to money? And we'll be talking to Brett Butler, who has just interviewed a bunch of people about that. We want to give, we want to be generous, we want to sow into the work of movements around the world, but we want to do it with wisdom and we want to understand what the issues are. So today we're going to hear some amazing stories and talk to Brett. We'll be right back with that in just a moment. Are you busy but not seeing the fruit you long for? Dissatisfied with your present level of impact on those around you, or frustrated with traditional methods of discipleship that don't seem to be effective? If so, the Getting Started in Disciple Making Movements course may be just what you need. Inside the Getting Started program, you'll get access to a step-by-step proven approach to making and multiplying disciples. Not only will you receive 25 short and practical video teachings spread out over 6 modules, but you'll have a chance to connect with others for group coaching via our monthly Zoom calls, and even more importantly, you'll become part of a global community of like-minded people from all over the world who are passionately committed to following Jesus and impacting others around them. If you want to get unstuck and begin moving forward as a disciple who makes disciples, I encourage you to go to courses.dmmsfrontiermissions.com and sign up for this powerful program today. And now to today's episode. It is so wonderful to have you on the Dare to Multiply podcast, Brett. Welcome. I'm so glad you could be on the show. Yeah.
Thank you, Cindy. It's wonderful to be here. Appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, well, tell us as we get started. A lot of people maybe don't know you, don't know much about your story, and you're a new friend to me as well. We just met over the phone, and here on this call, first time to be in a video call even with you. And so for me and for those who are listening, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how did this journey of being interested in disciple multiplication begin?
Oh, thanks for asking. So my name's Brett Butler. I'm from the Lexington, Kentucky area in the Bluegrass in the center of the state. I'm married
That's
to
in the
Patty.
United States, by the way.
Oh, that's right. Thank you. The United States. Yeah, I've got to remember. Thank you for correcting or reminding me. I'm married to Patty. She and I have been married for 23 years now. We have 4 children. We've each been married before, and so we each brought 2 to the party. So we have 4 children all together who are all grown adults now. And 2 of them are married, and one of them's fixing to get married real soon. I came to the Lord kind of late in life. Actually, after I moved to Kentucky. So Patty was born and raised here. My father had been in the U.S. military. We moved around a lot. I had been in the military. And then I moved around a lot with the military and with business. I left the military to become a businessman. And I'd been raised by my parents as kind of like a cultural Catholic.
Okay.
So I knew the Lord, was raised in church, didn't know the Bible that much, and then drifted away from that. Got married, and then unfortunately, that first marriage ended in divorce. And I never wanted that. And it was really that going through divorce that led me back to the Lord. Some friends at work here in Kentucky at a tech firm that I worked at were followers of Jesus, and they shared him with me and shared the gospel with me. And then, just over time, I made Jesus my king. I followed him. Shortly after that, my wife and I met at work. We both worked at the same tech company, and we got married in 2002. I accepted the Lord sometime in the year 2000. And honestly, we were just sort of doing the Christian Bible Belt thing here in America. We went to church, tried to pay attention in the sermon, served as a deacon, was on the finance committee with my business background. We had 4 children who lived in 3 households with their other parents. And so it was a complicated life, but we loved it. And then just about a year after we got married, it was the summer of when I would turn 40 later in the year. I was reading my Bible, and the Lord very clearly spoke to me and said he wanted us to be missionaries somewhere.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I
out
said.
of the blue?
It was totally out of the blue. It was very unexpected. And I argued with God. I said, well, that doesn't make any sense. I newly married. We have 4 children in 3 households, and half of them are knuckleheads at any given time, and they're teens and tweens. And I'm still learning the Bible. And I went to talk to my wife, and she said, because she'd been following Jesus for a long time, and she's like, "Oh, dear Lord, not a hut in the jungle." Because we don't camp.
Africa.
Right, exactly.
One of the most
Oh,
dangerous things to say, by the way.
right, no kidding. And we went and talked to our pastor, and he did the good pastor thing. He said, "Oh, the Lord will open and close doors. You'll figure it out." I'm like, okay. And bear in mind, one of my jobs in business life was strategic planning. So I would put together like 5-year plans. And I was learning like the Lord doesn't work that way, right? He's got a plan, but doesn't reveal it. So for about 10 years, the Lord didn't say much else. And then our 3 eldest all were grown and left the house. Our youngest was about to do the same. And in 2013, the Lord spoke to me again and pointed us at the San Francisco Bay Area. And then that made a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. He spoke to Patty at the same time. And so we're like, okay, boy, it's been 10 years, but the Lord finally revealed what he wanted us to do, to go and be church planters and missionaries in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is a very unreached part of the United States, very, very unreached. So it took us about 2 years to unwind our rich ruler lifestyle. We moved there in 2015. And now I'm going to get to your question about like DMM. Because in America, at least, and in the Bible Belt in particular, you'll hear a lot about church planting, but it's really what we just call the attractional model. So get a skilled person. So you need a good preacher, a great band, great like children's program, a core team of about 40 people, and in the Bay Area, $1 million.
$1 million. Wow.
Because of how expensive it is there. It's just what it takes. Well, we didn't have any of that. But the Lord was clearly moving in our lives, like go, and now's the time to go. And he did a bunch of things. So we went. We landed there the last weekend of April of 2015. The next weekend, an IMB missionary who was home kind of on medical leave for one of his kids, along with another American, had come to town to do a training, which turned out to be like a 4 fields T for T training. I didn't know any of this. It was just called how to share the gospel with people from South Asia. And there's a lot of South Asians, a lot of Indians in particular in the Bay Area because of the tech industry. So I went just trying to meet people. They start to explain all these biblical principles about how the kingdom grows. Boom, like my head just explodes with a couple of thoughts, right? Like one is, well, this makes a lot of sense, especially since God hasn't provided us like all the things that we're supposed to have for the normal model here. The second, though, was how come I've never heard about this before? Like it looks
Mm.
like it's in the Bible. And I go to tell my wife, and she's like, I don't know, they might be heretics, blah, blah, blah. And so they start investing in us. The missionary goes back home to India, the American in Southeast Asia or South Asia. The young man who lived in America was coaching us, became a great friend of ours, and we
Mm.
realized that yeah, God was calling us into kind of the DMM approach to doing this, and that's what we did for the next 7 years in the Bay Area until in 2022 God brought us back to Kentucky.
Mm. Wow. Wow. So you met this key person. All of a sudden, you realize, why haven't I ever heard of this? It's in the Bible. Seems like it's in the Bible, but it's
Seems like
something really
it.
different from what I've ever heard before. But God was leading you to give it a try, and you started doing that there in not an easy area of America to work in.
No, not that easy. Although, the more I talk to people around the world, it sounds like the soil's hard everywhere. but,
That's so true.
um,
That's so true.
it's just this simple process of abide in the Lord because He's our strength. Go talk with lost people. As you get to know them, share the gospel with them. Some will respond positively, some won't. For the ones who respond positively, teach them how to obey Jesus. Some will flake out, some won't.
Yeah.
As they stick with it, they kind of just naturally start to form into groups. And then leaders emerge, and then you invest in all that and repeat the process. And
Yeah.
so over those 7 years, yeah, we probably saw about 10 teams form all around the Bay Area. We
Right.
saw, I think, like 5 churches start, one collapsed, two merged. Coronavirus came and turned everything upside down.
Right. Right.
But disciples were made, and
Wow.
so many people just kind of came alive in this identity of ambassadorship and
Mm.
disciple making. And it was a joy. Honestly, there was a lot of ups and downs, but it was a
Yeah.
joy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you for your obedience to go for it in a place that, a lot of people would have said, I don't have $1 million. I guess I won't do
Mm,
anything.
mm.
But God had a plan in a way that was uniquely designed for you guys to do what He'd called you to do. And yeah, it's really beautiful. I'm
Yeah,
sure
we
we
praise
could talk a
God.
lot,
Yeah.
lot more about that, but I want to talk about our topic today, which is how outside money affects movement practitioners,
Yeah.
not just affects movements, which it does, but
Right.
how does it affect the leaders in the movement, the practitioners on the ground, and what kind of implications are there for those
Mm,
movement practitioners that we're trying to help and serve
mm.
through our giving? But you've been doing some research. Tell us, how did that start? Why did you decide to do this research to find out more about this topic? And yeah, then we'll hear
Mm.
more about where it led you. But first, why
Sure.
research
Yeah.
this?
So we're in the Bay Area, and we are experiencing all the ups and downs of pursuing movements.
Mm,
And you need encouragement. And
yeah.
then one day an email appears in my email box, and it's from somebody I know well who's forwarding an email from somebody I don't know, but the name is known in movement
Mm,
circles, right? And I'm like, oh. And so the person who originally sent it said, hey, I've got a friend from a certain part of the world, in the majority world, and I was talking to him, visiting him where he lives, and he had been to San Francisco before visiting a mission agency and was just surprised and appalled by sexual depravity, homelessness, drug abuse, all these things that a lot of times people in the majority world don't realize we have in America.
right,
And
right.
his heart was broken, and he's like, gosh, this particular gentleman was part of a movement that had reached hundreds of thousands of people in multiple countries. And he's kind of said to the guy that sent the thing, hey, I wonder if we should send missionaries to the Bay Area.
Hmm.
And so, he was kind of writing and said, hey, do we have anybody that's, pursuing movement in the Bay Area? He sent it to a bunch of people. My friend got it. He sent it to me. And I say, yeah, could we get like somebody who's really seen it happen come to the Bay Area as an encouragement to us? Yes, we will host him. And so we get connected, we make plans. In October of 2019, he comes to visit with us. And I'm taking him around to these different teams and places because I'm showing him off. I'm like, I know it's hard here, but it really can't happen. And he's seen it and he's been part of it for 15 years. And we happened to have a training scheduled then and gospel conversations. We went to various church meetings. He stayed with us for a week in our house. And about halfway through one day, he said, "Hey, Brett, can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." He said, "The places that we're going for training, did you pay for the training?" I said, "No." "Well, who paid for it?" "Well, the local church or whoever's sponsoring, they pay for the training." "Okay, did they pay you to come train?" I said, "No, I just go and do it, that's what we're supposed to do. That's what movement's based upon, right?" And he's like, "Okay." And the various churches that we've been through, I said, "Yeah." He said, "You started them?" I said, "Well, the Holy Spirit starts them, but yeah, he used me to help get it going." "And the pastors there, the elders, did you appoint them?" Like, "No, the local church recognizes their, qualifications." And I'm confused. Now, I'm naive is what it is. Anybody who's got ears to hear knows where this is headed, but I'm clueless. And he says, "Okay. And then are they paid?" I said, "Well, no, these are small, simple churches. I mean, their churches try to show them double honor, their elders, however they do." He's like, "But you don't pay them." I said, "No." And then he just got really quiet. And so the next day we go out on a drive again to go somewhere. And he's like, "Hey, can I talk to you about something?" I'm like, "Sure. What?" And then he proceeds to tell me the story about how this movement that he's been a part of for 15 years, that he's now one of the top 6 people in. He's the vice president for a certain area, which confused me because I'm like, vice president, I don't understand
In
that
a
title.
movement, we have vice
Right?
presidents.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Interesting.
And led by a man who's become a close friend of his. Once he got kind of at the higher levels, he discovered that money had come into this thing, and he was expected to provide these reports, and the numbers are always supposed to go up, and he's expected to go accompany the guy on trips, and whatever the guy says, he's supposed to agree with, kind of whether it's true or not. And this guy has really started to exercise control through the use of funds and resources and reassigning pastors if they don't do what he says and things like that. And it's really been troubling him, but he didn't really have any handles for it. And he felt like he was seeing something in our tiny little thing. And he just starts unburdening his heart to me about all this. Well, I don't know what to do. He goes back home. I call the guy from the email chain who I've now met, the originator. And I'm like, "What have you done to me?" And he's like, "Oh my goodness, it's worse than I thought." And I thought, "What?" And then coronavirus descends. And so I'm not able to visit him, for coronavirus, but he's going through this emotional, spiritual journey, he and his wife, because he feels like the Lord is leading him to leave all that behind, together with his $1,000 a month upper middle class income, because of the corruption that came with outside money as it poured into this movement once the West noticed it.
Right. Wow.
And over time, he became a very good friend of mine. He actually did decide to leave it behind. I've been able to go visit with him a number of times. He continues to be faithful, but I was just blown away by all that. And I was naive. I'd never heard about it before.
Yeah. And not that kind of thing you want to hear. It's sad, and yet that sad reality that sometimes we in movement circles think, oh, those kinds of things happen in mega churches, or the scandals, and yet success is such a danger, and it attracts money. And so there's a real challenge when you start to see incredible fruitfulness. Money does begin to become available, and what a challenge to movement leaders to continue to walk in integrity and not use those for control. Wow. So that's how you got started. And then how did that lead? What was the next step that God led you? You thought
So I'm flying back from visiting him. This is around 2023. at the beginning of 2023, and some different things that happened that a lot of them involve money and stuff like that. I had met another person from a different majority world country who'd come in to help us with something, and excuse me, I'd gotten to talking to him, and he shared like he had run into similar things. And honestly, I'm on the plane flying back, and I'm just mad,
Mm,
and I'm complaining to God,
mm,
right? Because these guys are really in a pinch a lot of times. The majority world
mm,
people, it really puts them in a bind. And my heart was breaking for him, and I was upset about it. And I'm complaining to God. And the Lord our God spoke to me again, kind of like these other times, right? And he said, Brett, I'm angry too.
mm.
And we need to deal with this. And I want you to be a part of dealing with it.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? Because I'm
Mm,
new to the whole game, right? I really have. I've
mm,
been a Christian for maybe like 10 or 12 years at this point. I'm brand new to the whole movement thing. I've got a business background, so I know how to talk about money, but this is all new to me. So I'm making all these excuses like, Jonah and Moses and stuff. And then the Lord's like, are you done? And I'm like, I'm done. And he said, I want you to be a part of it. So I go call the mentor again. So the person who started the whole email thing has now become a mentor. And I asked him about it. And he's like, it is a problem. And I could see how you have a background the Lord could use. And I said, well, we don't need another book about these things. What do you think? And as he and I kind of bounced it back and forth, we hit upon this idea of just collecting the stories as case
mm,
studies,
mm,
like my friend and this other guy and some other people had said. And so I just started calling people that I know without trying to be leading, right? I wasn't asking a lead, hey, I'm trying to understand the effect of outside money on movement practitioners in the majority world. And boy, people wanted to talk about it.
mm,
And then through relational networks, those led me to both Westerners and majority world people to collect these stories together. And at first I was thinking, okay, we'll just do that. We'll just let the stories speak for themselves.
mm,
And then as I was gathering them and sharing them with people, people kept saying, well, what do you think, Brett? You've talked to all these people. I'm like, let the spirit speak, let the word speak. But people kept asking. And so eventually I put together maybe some principles that I saw in scripture. And then they kept asking. And so then I kind of said, well, here's some things that Brett sees. But along the way, what I was experiencing was this emotional journey with people. It's such an emotional topic.
mm.
It's
Yes,
emotional
indeed.
for the Westerners because there's this sense of guilt and privilege and pity sometimes. It's
Mm,
emotional for the majority world people because if they ever do start receiving outside money, it's why we focus this word outside. If it
mm,
ever dries up, it's irreplaceable, but now you've gotten
mhm,
used to it.
mm,
It has effects on everybody around them.
mm.
There's all these legacies of colonialism. I mean, it's a huge emotional topic. And
Yes, indeed.
so what I was realizing is, oh, this is like an elephant in the room situation where
Mm,
everybody sees it, but nobody wants to talk about it because it's so emotional. And yet
yeah.
it's causing problems.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for your courage, Brett, in even
We
being
praise
willing
God.
to
Yeah.
listen to the stories because, yeah, they aren't fun stories to hear sometimes. You want to believe the best. You want to believe that everything is going great and people are walking in integrity and people are walking in fairness and all those
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things. You want to believe that because these are people that God is blessing and their
Right.
ministries,
Right.
are being
Right.
blessed of God, and hearing those stories can be hard. But I really appreciate about the way that you wrote the book, and your attitude is not just to hear, kind of blow the trumpet on, these
Mm-hmm.
negative things going on inside of the movements, but to help us understand what can we do in better ways and how can we really hear. the heart of what's going on. And I love that
Yeah.
about the way that you've approached this. So, yeah, tell us, as you were listening to all these stories, and I'm sure it was emotional for you as well. It would be for me, for sure.
Yeah.
What were some of the stories? Maybe just tell us
Mm,
one, or if we have time, maybe
okay.
two of these
Yeah.
stories that, yeah, kind of were aha moments for you. Like you heard this story and you're like,
Okay.
wow, that's something new that I hadn't heard before.
Okay. Yeah, you bet. So I'm gonna try three. We'll see how I do with time.
Okay,
I'll
sure.
shorten
Go
them,
for
right?
it.
And I'll tell you why. Because I don't want it to all be bad news.
Hmm.
Honestly, there is a lot of bad news, and we just have to be honest about that. But there's some good news too, and so I want to kind of share both. So after I did all the interviews, I kind of organized it into 16 stories that I put in this book. And one story that really struck me has to do with how our money affects the people in the majority world in ways that we might not really appreciate, especially if you're non residential. I think the people who live there might see it more, although they tell me that even there, they can't see it all. So it's a story that in the book we called Who Do You Love More? And the story opens up with this man who's living, I changed all the names and places to protect people's privacy, but a man who's living in, let's say, Africa, and his brother comes to him and says, "Who do you love more, that Westerner or your own people?"
Mm, that's a hard
And
one.
right, and the local guy's like, "What do you mean?" And he says, "Look, we know he comes to visit you. I'm sure he's given you money. You should be sharing that with us."
Mm,
And he's like, "No, no, we're actually just friends. Like, he doesn't give me money. We've talked about these things." Well, yeah, okay. So you just want to keep it all to yourself, is what you're telling me. I mean, come on. We all know how the game works.
mhm,
And besides that, even if he's not giving you money personally, which I'm sure he is, you do these trainings. I'm sure he's giving you money for the trainings. And the guy's like, "Well, sometimes, yeah, but we've even talked about that. And I kind of don't want to get into that game." And the guy's like, "Oh, come on, brother. We all know how it works. And I'm not even telling you," and this is all a true story, right? This really happened to this
mhm.
guy.
Oh, I can
I'm
believe it.
not,
I've heard those stories
have you heard
myself.
it yet? I'm not telling you just completely lie or take all of the money. What I'm saying is, you know, he gives you $100 for the training to train X number of people, and keep 20 for yourself, and maybe out of that 20 you keep 10 for yourself and you share 5 or 10 with the rest of us. And that's kind of how we end the story, right? Because
Yeah.
none of it do I ever resolve it, because I think that's part of the point, is we want like a cross-cultural team to get together and talk about this,
Mm,
right? Have you ever
yeah.
experienced that? Have you ever seen that, right?
Wow.
And one reason that I really appreciate that story is a mutual friend of ours, Gene Johnson,
Hmm.
writes about understanding those 4 spheres of the impact of something. She says, so if you're going to give money, not only are you going to impact the person you're giving it to, which is your goal, it's going to happen, and things are going to happen you might not expect with them, but then there's an impact on the people right around them,
Hmm.
and then there's an impact on their church, and there's an impact on the other churches in the same region or country, and then there's an impact on the lost people who are watching all this happen.
Hmm.
And honestly, probably because I just don't have that much experience like some of you do, that was all new to me. I never thought about all those dynamics.
That community perception that even if you're not taking any of the money, people won't believe that you aren't because that's what would be normal
Right?
in the culture or in that context. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So important. And as we can realize that, then that can inform the way that we work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
So
Tell us
that one
another
really hit
story.
me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another one, and this is more from the Western standpoint, and the way that I put it is, it's sort of like the death by 1,000 cuts for a lot of our majority world friends, or even somebody in the West who just lives in poverty. So if you're middle class or above, your life is pretty predictable. Somebody might wind up with cancer, right? Or somebody, you might have a car accident or something like that. But your life is pretty predictable. Your paycheck is pretty predictable, right? But for people who live in poverty, whether that's in the majority world or even here in the US, it's just one thing after another. And so we have a story called Running Out of Gas, which is about a Westerner who's visiting. It's told from the Westerner's perspective this time. So half the stories are told from the majority world perspective, half of them told from the Western perspective. Westerner's riding around town with his majority world friend. They've been doing a training together. The majority world friend hasn't really been all that smart about it because they've made it bigger than it should be. And there are some outsiders who came in and then they disrupted things and they spent money that he didn't have. And he's having to buy food for everybody for the training and all these different things, right? So he's kind of got a bunch of self-inflicted money wounds that he's done to himself. And then he looks, this is again a true story, he looks at the gas gauge and goes, oh my gosh, what is it? Says the Western friend. I'm almost out of gas. One of the invited guests, I let him borrow my car and he didn't put gas back in it. And now he's gone. And so the Westerner's sitting there going, I got $100 in my pocket. I could just fill up the whole tank. Because, of course, that's not what you do when you're poor. You don't fill up the whole tank. You go and you get like 4 liters, 6 liters, right? Just enough to get you there and get you back. And the Westerner's like, I could buy 3 tanks of gas with the cash I got in my wallet right now. Should I? Right? And that's where we just leave it hanging. Should I? And so I think what happens, I know I've experienced this as a Westerner, is I become friends with people, but then their lives are really difficult compared to mine. And honestly, for themselves or any of their family or their church, they could probably come to me every single day with a problem that for me would be relatively easy to solve. Not all together, right? But $50 here, $100 here, $30 there, $200 there. But something starts to happen when you do that. And yet now we've got Bible passages used as weapons. Well, doesn't it say in the Bible that if you see your brother naked and hungry and you just say, hey, be clothed and well fed, I'm praying for you. Well, that's not good enough, right? Well, but doesn't it also say if you don't work, you don't eat? Right? And how am I supposed to know? And I'm not from there. And
yeah, wow. Yes, been in those situations myself. Totally can relate to those stories. Those are times where we really, really need wisdom and discernment. And yeah, even talking as a team about that story. And I'd encourage you, those of you who are even listening to this, tell this story to your husband or your wife or your friend or your team member and ask them, what would you do? What do you think?
yes.
And let's talk about it. Because
so that was the big insight, right? The thing that was so helpful. And the third story I'll share briefly, that's kind of the good news story, is I was thinking about all these stories and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with these? And so just in talking with friends and seeking the Lord, this idea of get your cross-cultural team together and talk to each other. Now in America, we have this old kind of little joke, right? The joke goes like this. A father is at home one day. His son comes back from school. His son is like 15 years old. And father says to the son, hey, son, how are you? How was school today? Son says, it was good, Dad, but, well, can I ask you a question? Sure, son, what's that? Well, I have a friend at school who likes this girl, but he doesn't know how to tell her. What should I do? What should I tell my friend? And the father's like, oh, you got a friend. Okay. So the wise father knows that the son is talking about himself, but he's too embarrassed. It's too awkward. So he kind of puts the story on somebody else. And so the hope is you can read these stories as a team and go, okay, let's talk about somebody else's problem. And then kind of maybe grow in transparency and love and trust for one another. So the third story is about that. It's called Would Motorbikes Really Be Faster? So I think this one, we decided to put this one in India. Here's this movement that's growing, but it's kind of outgrowing itself, as so often happens. And they're a meeting, and it's like a budget planning meeting with locals and Westerners. And the question arises, hey, should we buy some motorbikes so that we can get to the further out places? And then the Westerners like, well, we could do that. I've got the money for that, but I'm not sure that would really be faster. And there's a young guy who's in the meeting now. He's young, so he's not going to say anything, but he's like, what on earth? I mean, what? You said that so glibly, right? You said that so, what? But there's an older guy who's like, oh, tell me what you mean, friend. And then together they walk through it. And the Westerner says, well, we could buy the motorbikes, but really you guys individually, you're really the constraint. It's not so much, can you get there? Or could you get there faster? It's you yourself that are the constraint because this thing is multiplying out. So what we really need are more laborers who are closer to it. So what if we just focused on the places that are right next to the places we want to reach next and raise up the laborers there, because then they can walk or take a bike or take a bus. And so here's this thing where, again, from the young guy's perspective, he's like, but you have the money. Why not just buy us the bikes?
Yeah, it's no brainer.
No brainer. Like, wouldn't more money make it go faster?
Right.
And so then, end of scene, nothing's resolved. Okay, now team, let's talk about this together. What do we think?
Yeah. I think that is so often, the mentality around the world, but I find it even more powerfully or poignant in the US. We really think money is the answer to every problem.
Yes.
It's so ingrained in us, to
Yes.
use our skills and our money to leverage success. And that if we have, if we throw enough money at a problem, we can fix it. And yet, that's just not always true. It's not always the solution. But it's true in Africa and Asia as well. People often have this idea that if we just had more, we could do more. And yet, it's not the way of Jesus. Yeah, he did so much with so little, but so much. Yeah, wow. Great conversations that can emerge. Thanks for sharing those 3 stories and how God is already using them as people are having these conversations, and getting to that conversation is where wisdom can begin to emerge. And as you said, trust and relationship. So, yeah, as you've gone through, listen to these stories, tell us what are some of the most important insights. I'm sure there's been so many, and people are going to have to read your book to read them all, but give us some of the top insights that really came to you as you listened to these stories.
Thank you. Yeah. Jesus, I started to realize, had a similar problem. What do I mean by that? He came from heaven. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. And so one of the first contrasted Bible stories that I feel like the Lord really taught me from is comparing the lame man healed at the pool of Bethesda in John chapter 5 to the story of what happened in Luke 4 at Simon's mother-in-law's house. So at Simon's mother-in-law's house, Jesus heals not only her, but Luke says then the whole countryside shows up and he just heals everybody and casts out all the demons. I don't know how much it is. It just says everyone. So a whole bunch of people. Okay. At the pool of Bethesda in John chapter 5, there is a crowd there of people who all have afflictions. Jesus goes in, he heals one guy, and he leaves. Was Jesus just tired that day? Did he run out of power? No, it can't be, right?
Right.
Well, so in one circumstance, he distributes all of these riches. And another one heals one guy and leaves. I can't even imagine what people said to the one guy, right? Why just you? Why are you so special? All these things, right? Hey, Jesus, how about me? And so I was thinking about that and like, well, I, what would the answer be? And once again, it's just all the simple stuff. It's slow down and ask the Father. So what does Jesus tell us? I don't do anything unless the Father tells me. How many times are the disciples like, where's Jesus? They're like, I don't know. He's off praying somewhere. So here's the Son of God, constantly filled with the Spirit of God, asking the Father what the Father wants him to do. And I think especially for us as Westerners, it's like, slow down. I know that's true for me. Slow down. Have you sought the Lord? Have you been in the Word? Have you gotten with the rest of the body of Christ? Or do you just want to ride in and be the hero? Or are you just trying to assuage your guilt? Or even worse, are you responding out of pity? So slow down, ask the Father, and examine your heart. Why are you doing this? I would love for there to be a sequel to this book with some more stories, but with some principles or wisdom directly from majority world friends. So I found it was a little hard. Like if there's people with majority world friends who love to share their stories, I'd love to talk to them. So first of all, there's often a language barrier and time zones and all that sort of stuff. But it also can be hard if you don't have money to talk about money.
Painful.
Right? Painful. And yet I would love to hear from them because it relates to another thing, which is, who is my brother and how shall I love him? So it does say, if you see your brother naked and hungry and all you do is pray for them, then what good is that? But I think the operative word there is see. So what does that tell me? Oh, that tells me this is in the context of a local church. Well, why is that important? Because I can also see if it's a situation of if you don't work, you don't eat. Right? I can see what kind of person this is. We can do this together as a church family. But especially if I'm non-residential, or what my friends, my Western friends who tell me is, even if they are residential, you're always kind of still an outsider. Right? And so this idea of learning to have wisdom across these cultural boundaries is really key. It's really key.
Yeah. So important. Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me a bit of when we were working in India, and we started working in slum communities and working with beggars, and the Lord was really dealing with my heart. How do we love people in such dire poverty? How do we truly love them? And one of the things the Lord said to me was what you just referenced. I want you to look at them and see them, not as a beggar, but as a person. As a person who's a child of someone, who's a mother, who's, a real person, and engage with them as people. And I'll sometimes direct you to give, and sometimes I won't. But you always need to see. Don't be afraid to look.
And my experience is, well, no, that hurts more.
It does. It hurts us.
Right? If they're the object of my pity or a project I'm taking on, I kind of have an emotional distance. But if I see them as a person, well, now it hurts more.
So true.
And God's like, yeah, don't I know? Don't I know? And so the guidance, so people said, Brett, what do you think? And I really didn't want to share that. I'm like, let the Spirit and the Word and the Spirit and the Word and the people of God do that. But people kept asking. So I kind of wrote down 9 or 10 things. And the first one to me was for Westerners. So this is just Westerners. Far be it from me to tell majority world people what to do. Westerners, be generous and be wise. The Bible is clear. The rich have a responsibility for the Lord to be generous with the poor. Right? About 1 million times it says that.
Mm.
However, I think as Westerners, very often we've not been wise.
Mm.
Well, what does wisdom look like? You said the first one. First of all, recognize that money is not the solution.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the solution for both economic reasons, but more importantly for spiritual ones.
Mm.
Second of all, and we shouldn't have to say this, but kind of two things that go together. Hey, don't give money to people you don't know very well.
Mm-hmm.
And don't put money in situations you don't know very well. How on earth can you be wise? Okay, well, that sounds like that takes a lot of time and energy. Well, yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So if you're just wanting to write it, if you look at your heart, you examine your heart, and you realize, oh, what I'm really trying to do here is write a check so that I'll feel better,
Mm.
well, we're in danger, aren't we? And we're not only endangering ourselves, we're endangering our majority world friends.
Mm. Mm.
So take the time to do that. Guess what? That's inefficient. You might spend more in travel to go visit these people that you're hoping to become friends than you'll ever give them.
Mm.
Well, what's the expense ratio of the blah, 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 and the return on investment, yada, yada. You're like, that's not how the economy of God works.
Mm. Mm.
So those are some of the things that God taught me.
Wow, wow,
Yeah.
wow. Brett, thank you so much. These are gems. I hope those who are
Mhm.
listening will really take to heart. And Brett, I don't sense you're giving us all the answers, but you're saying
Mhm.
these are real things to wrestle with. They're
Mhm.
real issues. We can't just ignore the elephant in the room. We have to
Yeah.
deal with them. We have to think about them. And
Mhm.
as we do that, God's going to reveal himself to us. He is going to lead us. And having been someone who's lived overseas for over 30 years,
Yeah.
he does lead us. And
Mhm.
we don't get it right all the time.
Mhm.
But in the midst of it, he leads us, and we have the joy of knowing him in that pursuit and getting to know our brothers and sisters who are from Africa, from Asia, in a much richer, deeper way as we are willing to go to some of the hard places and ask questions and
Mhm.
learn from them and from their
Yeah. Be
experiences.
in relationship, right? To
Mm,
really be in relationship with my friend that I've talked about here. I mean, it hurts,
mm,
you know. Honestly, he's stronger than I am. His family's stronger than I am. They've been doing it for a long time. They know how to do this, right? They've told me that before. Hey, we know how to do. We know how to do this.
mm.
So yeah, I agree with you, Cindy. There's a lot to just learn in being in community together, being transparent, being vulnerable.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. Yeah. Wow. And it's a beautiful, painful, amazing experience as it is as we walk with God overall. So yeah. Well, Brett, tell people, how do they get a hold of your book? I'll hold it up here
Mhm.
so people can see it. There
You
we go, in
bet.
front of the
So, To
camera.
Whom Much Was Given, you can find it on Amazon. It's available both in print on demand and as a Kindle book. We also have a website, movementsandmoney.org, where you can get PDFs. And again, for some people, we're not charging much for the book, but if that's a problem for you, you can write in and ask for a coupon. Importantly, we also have the stories themselves translated into a variety of languages, both written and audio. So you can stream the stories in an audio version or you can download them also as MP3s.
Wow. Yeah. Well, and I just want to plug this book and say, if you are working on a cross-cultural team,
Mhm.
get a copy of this book,
Oh,
use it as
praise
part of
God.
your orientation, talk through some of these issues. If you're a missions committee and you're
Mm,
struggling with how to give in the right kinds of ways as true partners and friends, not just people who, again, write a check and feel better, but people who really want to invest and partner with missionaries and movements that are happening around the world, and get a hold of this resource. It's an excellent, excellent resource. So I highly
mm.
recommend it. Brett, any last words, what you'd like to say to people to encourage them or help
Mm.
people as they're processing these things?
Thanks, Cindy. Thank you. Well, we praise God for everything that you said there. I guess first would be a request, like I said, I would love to hear directly from majority world people on this topic. Again, it has to be a person with a certain amount of maturity. It's tough topics to discuss. But I'd love to hear their stories. I'd really love to hear their perspectives. It's like one of the things that I say to Westerners is don't give money to people you don't know very well. One of the things I think might be true for majority world people is don't accept money from people you don't know very well.
Wow.
I'd like to hear that from their perspective, not mine. But it actually leads me to the second request I had. I feel a strong leading from the Lord that He wants us to dig into the question of donors and agencies next, particularly major donors. Because I realize this book is really for the practitioners in the field, right? These are the people with their boots muddy, right? Their noses bloodied and their boots muddy. But as I've talked to people who have more experience in this, over and over again, what I hear is, well, the root cause of this really has to do with Western donors and agencies and what they do. I don't know a lot about that field, but I feel like God's really kind of asking us to dig into that next. So if that's something you want to do, you can email me at bb@movementsofmoney.org. There's a thing you can fill out on the website as well.
bb@movementsandmoney.org. I'm going to put that on the screen for people. And yeah, thanks so much, Brett. It was really a joy to have you. And I will be right back with a quick recap and an action step for you to take.
Are you ready to unlock your potential as a disciple maker? Then it is time to dive deeper into the principles that are changing lives with the Multipliers Mindset course. This transformative course accompanies the book The Multipliers Mindset, Thinking Differently About Discipleship by Cynthia Anderson. These lessons will help you not just through reading about a multiplying movement, but how to actively live out a lifestyle that leads towards movements. And here's the best part. It comes with a practical workbook, which is designed to take your learning even further. This workbook guides you step by step to apply what you learn and to impact the lives of lost people around you. With easy-to-follow steps, uplifting lessons, and timeless truths from the book, this course equips you to make disciples and to start groups that multiply. Visit multipliersmindset.com to step further into the work God is calling you to do. Let's multiply together.
Wow, not an easy topic at all, and yet such an important one for us. Some of my takeaways were that multiplication and fruit doesn't always mean money is being handled wisely or fairly. And that's a hard reality, but one that we need to be aware of. Talking about these financial issues is an emotional thing, and yet it's the elephant in the room. And it has to be talked about if we want to have deep and genuine relationships cross culturally and even across different economic statuses, right? Different economic um, people who have different economic benefits or abilities. If we want to have deep relationships, we need to be willing to talk about these things. Brett talked about how Western donors often struggle with guilt, with pity, with wanting to quickly rescue and get it over with, rather than being willing to go deeper in understanding, in finding out what's really going on, and in relationship. He told several stories. The Who Do You Love More story, such a great story about community expectations on anyone who interacts with foreigners, whether they are receiving money or not. Those kinds of questions are so common. The running out of gas story. Should I give? This conflict that happens within us in these types of situations and that we have to grapple with the Holy Spirit's help. And then the story, will motorbikes really be faster? Another great story that money isn't always the solution or the best solution to see greater fruitfulness and multiplication. And then Brett's principles, slow down, ask the Father, examine your heart, be generous and be wise. And don't give money to people you don't know well or into situations you don't know well. Invest the time to get to know in a deeper relationship the people that you're giving to or that you're sowing money into their ministries. And then the reverse, don't accept money from people that you don't know well. And great insights for us. My assignment for you, or my action step that I'd like to give you this week, is to take one of those 3 stories he told, tell it to somebody else, and have a little discussion about it, saying, what would be wisdom? What do you think would be the best thing to do in this situation? And what would the Holy Spirit show us as we learn and grow in this area of generosity? We do want to be generous. Those of us who come from the West or come from a greater economic capacity, we want to be generous, but we want to be wise. But to do that, we have to be willing to hear the tough stories and to grapple with the tough issues. So talk to somebody about one of those stories and see what they think. I know that the Lord's going to give you wisdom. God bless you guys. Keep making and multiplying disciples in your area, and we'll be back next week with another episode. Bye for now. That's all we've got for this episode of Dare to Multiply. One thing that would really help both us and other people who might like to listen in is for you to rate and review the podcast, if you haven't done that yet, on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. I'd also love to connect with you on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Feel free to message me with any topics, questions you'd like addressed, or guests you'd like me to interview. Until next week then, please remember, no matter how ordinary you feel, God's dreams for us are always bigger than we can imagine. Let's dare to trust Him for a greater harvest.